There sits a little box of salt in almost every pantry across the land, resting on a shelf, seen as nothing more than a simple dash of flavor for your evening meal. It costs practically pennies for a good-sized carton, and a lot of people never stop to think it might be useful for anything past seasoning their supper. But the truth is, salt stands as one of the most ancient and handy supplies a home could ever hold. It was so highly valued in times past that men actually earned their living in it. And it can tackle a dozen chores around your home that you likely buy fancy, expensive bottles to handle today. It washes, it scrubs, it kills a flame, it rescues a mess, it calms a raspy throat, all straight out of that humble carton in your pantry. Today, I want to share 10 of the greatest traditional uses for regular table salt. You might just view that little box in a whole new light. Here on our farm, we put a lot of faith in those simple, inexpensive goods that handle multiple chores. Vinegar, baking soda, and salt are right at the top of that list. My own mother kept salt not merely for eating, but for scrubbing, preserving, and the occasional home comfort. She kept a large crock of it and dipped into it almost as frequently as she went to the water bucket. It is one of those modest, timeless goods that anyone with a little know-how should never run out of, and it keeps a fair bit of money in your pocket, too. So, let me walk you through exactly what that bargain box of salt is capable of. I often recall the way my grandmother talked about salt, having learned from her own mother just how precious it used to be. It was carted in by the heavy barrel and watched closely, a supply you dared not waste a single speck of. Back before anybody had a cooling box in their kitchen, salt was the very thing that kept a family fed through the harsh winter months. It was the salt that stopped the pork from turning, salt that preserved the catch and the hams until the spring thaw arrived. A household's salt supply was nearly as vital as their flour. Therefore, the folks back then figured out every possible way to put it to work, indoors and out, and they handed that wisdom down. My mother held on to her big crock and found a dozen ways to put it to work. Even though salt costs next to nothing nowadays, and we take it for granted, that older wisdom of what it can accomplish is entirely worth holding on to. That is the knowledge I hope to pass along to you today. The very first trick is for cleaning up a flat iron that has caught something sticky and burnt on its bottom. You know that dark, scorched sludge that fouls up the smooth metal plate, making it catch and stain your good fabric. Salt pulls it right away. You get your iron nice and hot. While it warms up, lay out a piece of paper, just a sheet of wax paper or old newsprint, and scatter a heavy, thick coating of salt across it. After that, you just glide that heated iron back and forth over the salt for a minute or two. The salt grabs hold of that charred, sticky film right off the iron's face and binds it up on the paper. Once you finish, your iron's plate is slick and clean once more, perfectly spotless without any harsh liquids or scraping. The salt provides the scrubbing, mild enough to protect the metal, but rough enough to peel away the mess. This works because every tiny fleck of salt acts as a stiff, sharp little rock. When you drag them hot across that dirty surface, thousands of them scrub the burnt matter free. Yet they are softer than the metal itself, so they leave no scratches. Standard table salt does a fine job, though a coarser grain scrubs even better if the mess is fighting you. The second use is for managing a dropped egg. It is one of the most frustrating little kitchen disasters, because a raw egg hitting the floor turns into a slick, slimy puddle that you just push around with a cloth and never fully grab. Salt calms it right down. You scatter a heavy blanket of salt directly over that busted egg and let it rest for 10 or 15 minutes. The salt pulls the moisture out and stiffens the egg, binding that watery, slippery puddle into a solid mass. Then you can easily sweep or wipe it away in one single motion, straight into the dustpan or onto a rag, without chasing it across the floor. It sounds like a minor detail until the next time an egg slips from your fingers, and then you will be thankful for the trick. It behaves the same way on any wet, slick spill of that nature, things that are runny and tough to collect. The salt drinks up the wetness and hardens the mess, letting you scoop it up all at once instead of smudging it around and wasting half a roll of towels. Salt changes a slippery headache into an easy cleanup. The third use is the most crucial of them all, and it might just save your home or your life one day. Listen closely to this one, because it is how to kill a grease fire. This is a fact every single person who stands at a stove must know by heart. When cooking oil or fat catches a flame in the pan, which happens in the blink of an eye, you must never, under any circumstances, toss water on it. Throwing water on a grease fire will not extinguish it. It causes an explosion, scattering blazing grease in every direction and turning a minor flare-up into a complete tragedy. So, water is absolutely out, but salt will choke it out. You grab that carton of salt and dump it, a massive amount of it, straight over the fire. The salt smothers the flames, starving the fire of the air it requires, and kills the blaze. Make sure to keep your salt sitting close to the stovetop, and if the grease ever ignites, put salt on it, never water. Slapping a metal lid over the skillet does the same thing by cutting off the draft. Let me be clear. This advice is for a tiny grease fire caught immediately in the pan. If a fire has climbed and spread, it is beyond a carton of salt. At that point, you get your family outside, call the firemen, and do not try to be brave. But for that unexpected skillet of burning fat, salt is your ally and water is your worst foe. Holding on to that single fact might spare you from ruin, and you should understand why water is so lethal in this case. Because the reason matters. Burning fat is much, much hotter than boiling water. When water touches it, that liquid turns to steam instantly and shoots upward, carrying the blazing oil into the air like a massive fireball, spreading the flames all over the room in a second. That is exactly how a little pan fire burns a kitchen down the second water hits it. Salt, since it is dry, does no such thing. It merely suffocates, blanketing the oil and blocking the air. Please teach this lesson to every soul living under your roof, even the youngsters once they are old enough to stand near the stove. When a person gets scared, their first instinct is always to grab the water pitcher, and you have to train that thought right out of them. Salt or a heavy lid, never water. Keep that salt box within a short arm's reach of your burners so you can grab it blindly. The fourth trick is for a skillet that has food baked and charred right onto the bottom. You know that blackened layer that absolutely refuses to budge, no matter how hard you scrub. Salt will lift it right up. Just coat the bottom of your skillet with a generous layer of salt, and pour in a splash of water just enough to turn it into a thick paste. Let that salty paste rest in the pan for roughly 10 minutes. The salt eats away at the charred food and oil, breaking its hold on the metal. After it sits, you can just wipe the mess right out where moments ago it was cemented on and carry on with your chores. It is a wonderful, mild method to wash a blackened skillet without gouging the metal or wearing out your shoulder. And it is particularly kind to cast iron, because it washes the pan without eating away the hard-earned seasoning like strong soap and harsh scrubbing surely would. When dealing with cast iron, you can actually scrub it out using a heavy handful of coarse salt and a tough brush, or even a bundled-up rag, while the metal still holds some heat, using no water whatsoever. The salt grinds away the stubborn food and fat, leaving your skillet perfectly clean while keeping the seasoning completely intact. After that, just wipe it out, massage a drop of oil into the iron, and it is prepared for your next supper. The grandmothers washed their iron like this for decades, relying on salt instead of soap, and their skillets lasted a lifetime, and then some. They were passed down to the next generation, looking as black and smooth as polished glass. Salt truly is a cast iron pan's greatest ally at washing time. The fifth use comes right on the heels of the fourth, because once you finish cleaning that greasy pan, your washcloth or sponge is likely looking foul and slick. Rather than tossing it in the trash, you can revive it with some salt. Just fill up a bowl with a few cups of water and stir in a solid quarter cup of salt until it dissolves. Drop your grimy sponge straight into that salty bath and let it steep until morning. When you wake up, the brine will have pulled all the fat and sourness right out of the sponge, leaving it fresh, clean, and prepared for another round of chores. It spares you from tossing a sponge away prematurely, and sweetens up a sour rag to boot. The sixth trick targets those stubborn rings in a bathtub, a wash basin, or on any porcelain fixture. I am talking about those deep stains that regular soap just ignores. A lot of folks will grab a harsh, chemical scrubbing powder or something even stronger for this chore, but there is no need. You just take your salt, which acts as a very mild, fine abrasive, and match it with a splash of vinegar or the juice from a halved lemon, and you have got a perfect tub cleaner. You can scatter the salt directly over the dirty ring, then scrub it using that half a lemon. The salt provides the elbow grease, while the tartness of the lemon or vinegar eats through the stain and the crusty mineral buildup. Working together, they pull those stains away and leave your porcelain shining and white. It costs pennies. It goes easy on the delicate porcelain, and it leaves your home smelling of fresh lemon instead of burning your nose with chemical fumes. Salt paired with lemon, or salt paired with vinegar, and your wash tub gleams again. It does wonders on rust marks and hard water rings, particularly those spots that crust over right where the faucet drips and pools. The acid from the citrus or vinegar breaks down that stony mineral scale, while the salt rubs it right off. Just one fair warning. Keep this mixture away from natural stone or marble countertops, because the acid will eat into them. But for your standard enamel, porcelain tubs, and sinks, it is a wonderfully safe and powerful cleaner. For a truly stubborn mark, mix the salt and vinegar into a thick paste. Let it rest on the stain for a spell, and then give it a scrub. Even an ancient ring will finally surrender. The seventh trick handles a stubborn or sluggish drain. It is a headache I have discussed before, but adding salt gives the remedy a bit more muscle. When the sink refuses to empty, start by pulling out whatever hair or gunk you can easily grab with your fingers. After that, you whip up your fizzing drain cleaner. Blend a 1/4 cup of baking soda with a 1/4 cup of table salt. Dump that mixture straight down the pipe and follow it up with roughly a 1/2 cup of basic white vinegar. It will immediately start bubbling and expanding inside the plumbing. The salt brings a gritty, scouring power to all that fizzing. Just step back and let it do its job for a solid 15 minutes. Next, you heat a kettle of water to a rolling boil and send it right down the pipe to wash the entire mess away, flushing out the broken up sludge and any remaining powder. Now, I will give you the same honest warning as always. This handles the soft blockages, the fat, the soap scum, and those minor clogs that form over time. If your pipe is jammed tight like a brick wall, you might need to call a professional. But for your everyday sluggish sink, this soda, salt, and vinegar method is a brilliant, inexpensive trick to attempt well before you pour dangerous liquids down your plumbing. So, those are the 7 ways salt can scrub and fix things around the homestead. But we are not finished yet. I have 3 more uses right from the kitchen, because preparing and preserving meals is where the older generations valued salt the highest. The 8th trick is stopping your sliced vegetables and fruits from turning dark. You know exactly how a sectioned apple or a naked potato will quickly turn brown and unappetizing once the air hits it. A dash of salt will keep them looking crisp and bright. Just stir a pinch of salt into a basin of cold water until it dissolves, and toss your apple wedges or peeled spuds right into that weak brine. It stops the darkening dead in its tracks while you finish your chores, keeping everything pale and crisp until you need it. Just go easy on the salt. Give the food a fast rinse before cooking, and your produce will stay beautiful. It is a wonderful habit to get into when you are peeling a mountain of potatoes or cutting up apples for a big pie, and you cannot handle them all at the exact same moment. The grandmothers always kept a pan of that salted water sitting close by as they prepped, tossing every piece in the moment their knife finished the cut. That way, a solid afternoon of peeling remained bright and flawless, right up until everything was tossed into the cooking pot. The 9th use is actually a couple of traditional cooking secrets concerning eggs. First off, if you are making poached eggs, dropping a spoonful of salt into the hot water encourages the egg white to bind together quickly and stay firm. Instead of feathering out into messy strings, your egg will cook up perfectly tidy and compact. The second secret is a method for checking if an egg has gone off. a trick every home with a chicken coop needs in their back pocket. You fill a dish with water and mix in enough salt to make a strong brine. Then, you gently lower your egg into the liquid. A freshly laid, safe egg is dense, so it will drop straight down and lay flat on the floor of the bowl. A stale egg has slowly lost its internal dampness and pulled in air through the shell. Because of that, a rotten egg will bob right to the surface, and one that is just beginning to age will tip up and stand on its point. To keep it simple, sinking means it is safe. Floating means it is garbage. This lets you test a questionable egg in seconds, saving you from cracking a rotten one straight into your fresh cake batter and ruining the whole bowl. The reason this works becomes obvious once you understand it. An eggshell isn't completely solid. It actually breathes through thousands of tiny pores. As an egg gets older, it slowly evaporates its moisture right out through the shell, and it pulls air inside to take up the empty space. That creates a growing air bubble inside. A newly laid egg has hardly any air in it, which makes it heavy enough to sink. An older egg holds a big pocket of air, which makes it light enough to bob to the top. It is a wonderfully trustworthy trick. And any family keeping chickens, where you might have eggs laid on different days and aren't quite certain of one, would be wise to remember it. A fast dip in the brine tells you the honest truth before you put faith in that egg. The 10th trick is a comforting, old-time remedy. Now, I have to give you a fair and honest warning right up front, just like I always try to do, because I am not a medical man and this is certainly not a cure, but a warm saltwater gargle brings real relief to a sore throat. When your throat feels raw, scratchy, and painful, you simply dissolve a good spoonful of salt into a mug of warm water. You take a mouthful, gargle it deep in your throat, and spit it out, doing this a few times over. It calms the raw feeling and can actually help pull the swelling down, bringing some welcome ease. It is a home comfort that folks have leaned on for a very, very long time. But please hear me clearly. This only offers relief. It doesn't cure a sickness, and it cannot replace a visit to the doctor. If a sore throat is severe, refuses to leave, or comes with a heavy fever or difficulty breathing, that is a matter for a medical professional, and not something you just try to rinse away. Make sure you see someone for that. But for your everyday scratchy throat, a warm salt rinse is an inexpensive old comfort that genuinely helps. It works by naturally drawing out moisture, the way salt always does, which eases the puffy, irritated tissues in your throat and helps wash away whatever is causing the scratchiness. The warmth of the water is a comfort all on its own, too. Gargle with it a few times throughout the day as long as the pain lingers. Keep it warm and don't make it overwhelmingly strong. Just a decent spoonful to a mug is plenty. It stands as one of the most ancient home remedies we have, and it is mild enough for almost anyone who is old enough to gargle without swallowing the water. Now, allow me a brief thought to close this out. I'm not giving a sermon on profits, because nobody is running a grand scheme with salt. It is simply a cheap, old friend, but it is something worth paying attention to. You have this one inexpensive carton, costing mere pennies, that scrubs your skillets, cleans your iron, kills a kitchen fire, comforts your throat, and preserves your harvest. Even so, we have been trained to purchase a completely different, high-priced item for every single one of those chores. A dedicated skillet scrub, a specialized scouring powder, a toxic drain unblocker, and fancy throat drops. An entire cabinet stuffed with pricey bottles just to do the exact work that one simple box of salt can handle. There is plenty of money to be made in selling a person 10 different items, and zero profit in reminding them that the cheapest thing in their pantry already tackles the lot. So, that old wisdom of what basic salt can accomplish was simply pushed aside by rows of brightly colored, expensive bottles. It wasn't some grand plot, just the way the world slowly drifted, and folks simply forgot. But the older generations didn't forget a thing, because salt was far too valuable and handy to be dismissed as just a dinner seasoning. So, there you have 10 solid tasks for a basic box of salt. And believe me, there are plenty more beyond these. It washes a burnt iron, binds up a shattered egg, suffocates a dangerous grease fire, peels the scorched crust out of a skillet, sweetens a sour cleaning rag, polishes your tub with a bit of lemon, pushes through a sluggish drain, stops sliced apples from browning, holds a poached egg together, checks for rotten ones, and brings relief to a raw throat. Every bit of it, out of that bargain carton on the shelf, you figured was just meant for the dining table. Keep it close by, and you will catch yourself reaching for it time and time again. Now, I would love to hear your thoughts. Drop a note down below and tell me how you put salt to work in your own home and kitchen. I know the seasoned cooks and homemakers watching have a dozen clever tricks I didn't even mention. And let me know what corner of the country you are watching from, and if that grease fire warning or the floating egg trick was brand new information to you. Because these fading bits of wisdom are exactly the kind of things that slip away, and it brings me joy to see where they are still being put to use. I read every single comment. When we meet next, I plan to share the absolute greatest traditional use for salt of them all, the one chore it was most cherished for through all those long centuries before cooling boxes existed. Using salt to cure and preserve food, the hams, the thick bacon, the salted fish, and all the rest. How the old-timers stored their meat to survive the whole year, armed with nothing but salt and good sense. The generations before us understood that a handful of cheap, basic goods with salt sitting right at the very top could handle the exact chores we now buy cabinets full of expensive bottles to do. They held on to those staples and learned every way to use them. There is a deep, quiet wisdom found in that humble box of salt that flavors your supper, scrubs your floors, and fixes a dozen daily problems, all for just a few pennies. The hard-working folks who built this land with their own bare hands understood that completely.